right, so welcome to the next week. So let's get to it. All right, so first thing first I want to do is talk about game mechanics. Okay, so at the very core of every game, there's basically three primary things, and there's a lot of variants of what people would agree. So you have a player, who basically, player or players that agree to the game, to follow the rules of the game. Okay, then you have a victory condition, which means that you win the game in some way. And the middle thing would be the game mechanic, which are basically the rules of the game. Okay. More or less, when you have a game, it is just a collection of these various mechanics that allow you to play it. Okay, so if we were going to do a basic first-person shooter game, you'd have an aiming mechanic, one that allows you to move around, one that shoots, one that maybe controls like a radar, one that has like that controls your life bar, things like that. Okay. Each one of those is a different mechanic, and all of them combined create the game. Okay. Now, one of the things you have to take into account is that, like web design versus web development, there's two aspects to game, right? So, web design is the look of the web page, but web development is the underlying technology that allows the stuff to happen. Like you can have a calculator or different things. When you think about gameplay, that's a design concept. So someone will think about it more from an aesthetic point of view. They'll go out there and be like, okay, we're going to make like an RPG role-playing game, and it's going to be different because it's going to be underwater, and they're just going to talk about what it would be. But game mechanics is like the brass tacks, like this is what has to happen in order for this to work. Okay. Again, it has nothing to do with the graphics or anything like that. It has to do with basically to a large extent, kind of the technology allows it to occur. Okay. In our case, it's technology, but obviously if you do a board game, there's mechanics to that, but mechanics in a video game is about that. So for the most part, when you talk about game mechanics, you're usually talking about coding. Okay. What I did for this is basically I made 4 different games. Okay. 4 different game tutorial series. So I did a 2D platform, a 2D shooter, a ship shooter like Space Invaders, and like an action RPG. Okay, so these actually go in level of difficulty, so from easiest to hardest. So by far the easiest one is this 2D shooter, and basically it's the thing where people pop up and you shoot them. Okay, so that's what this one is. So there's, I think it's only like, oh, I have these out of order. Oops. There's only 3 videos, which is super easy. It's relatively simple, so if you really don't feel secure, just do this one. This would be your best bet. I did another one that's more of like, it kind of reminds me of like Zelda, like old 8-bit things where you would kind of like move from spot to spot. Okay, that's what this one is, and that's Rogue. That's probably the next easiest one. It's relatively, you can see like, so basically there's a path you have to follow, and then there's this enemy that will try and follow you around it. Okay, so you can follow that one. The platforming might be easier maybe in some ways than this one, but basically it's like Mario. For this case, I have to my daughter Louise trying to jump these different things, and there's like an enemy, this little dragon guy, and that's basically what this tutorial series is. And then the last one is Galaga, which is like Space Invaders, and so basically, the enemy comes down. Let's see if I can find one that kind of shows it better. The enemy comes down, and you're like a guy that flies back and forth and around, and you can shoot, and there's enemies come down that shoot at you, more or less. Okay, so this is the most difficult one. Now, so I made these various game versions, and what I want you to do for next class, basically, is just follow one of these tutorials. You don't have to follow it to a T. You can just use it as a guide. So if you don't want to do certain aspects of it, probably what I would suggest is trying to follow it relatively closely, and then take out the things you don't want and add new things that you do. But choose one of these, whatever kind of game style you want to make, and that's it. Now, when you complete this, it'll make the game playable, but it won't be like complete. There'll be like little glitches here and there. It won't have a start screen or end screen. It won't have any UI elements to like keep score or health bars or anything like that. But it has the basic game mechanics, and it has the player controllers, so you can play the game. But it just doesn't have the victory condition aspect, really. Okay, so I want you to just choose one of these 4 tutorials, basically follow that, and then next week we will we'll complete each one of these games. So I'll make a tutorial for each one that completes them. And the last thing we're going to do is basically a 3D game. All right. So, and that will be it. So we're almost done. So basically just try to follow these as best you can. If you run into any issues, let me know. I think I might actually attach also the code in here as well. I might put those maybe like right after 2D Shooter. I'll make it so there's like a zip file that you can select, and it will give you the JavaScript code. Okay, or maybe like the example project folder or something like that. That way you can look at it and use it as a guide. All right, good luck.